West Asia is bracing for an all-out war. After Tehran's October the 1st missile attacks, Israel's strike on Iran, its retaliatory strike, will be lethal, precise, and especially surprising, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has just declared. But the manner and timing of the retaliation has sparked speculation. Now, Israel can exercise a range of choices to target Iran, from Iranian government buildings, its leadership, military bases, to sensitive oil installations, and finally to the heavily fortified nuclear facilities hidden deep below the ground. So what are the options before Israel? Option number one, Israel can bomb Iran's nuclear sites. This can set Iran's nuclear plan back by many years. But this option won't be easy, according to experts. The probability of this option is low. Option number two, to cripple Iran's economy, Israel can strike at Iran's energy and oil facilities and petrochemical plants. But this has its own risks. Such strikes could rattle global oil markets and shake the US economy on the eve of a presidential election. There's also the risk of an Iranian retaliation, not only against Israel, but against American troops stationed in the region. Option number three, Israel can attack Iran's security sites, its missile bases, its air force bases. Israel has accused Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps of spreading violence through its allies and proxies, the so-called Ring of Fire. But Iran and Israel are around 1,500 kilometers apart, separated by Iraq, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. Striking Iran's military bases may invite hostile fire from other countries. That possibility can't be ruled out. To discuss how exactly Israel will retaliate, I have my colleagues on Ground Zero. In fact, TV9 is the only media network to have correspondents in both Israel and Lebanon. Joining me from Israel is my colleague Manish Jha, and on the front lines from the war in Lebanon is my colleague Sumit Chaudhary. I have with me in the studio my colleague Deepak Badana, and joining us from Israel is Itai Melchior, Israeli defense expert. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Manish, I want to start by asking you this. Today is Yom Kippur. It's one of the holiest Jewish holidays. Most of Israel would be on holiday today, observing Yom Kippur. But we also know that 1973 was when you had the Yom Kippur War. And today, West Asia is on the edge because it's anticipating a retaliatory strike from Israel. What are your sources telling you on the ground, Manish? Is an Israeli attack on Iran imminent? And if so, how will it play out?
Thank you, Sandeep. No doubt, Yom Kippur is the holiest day for the Jews, but rest of the world is connected Yom Kippur to the Yom Kippur War, which we know what happened in 1973. Since you have mentioned so many options that what Israel can do, what kind of response Israel will do against Iran, let me add one more thing. The prime target of Israeli response will be to change the regime. Yes, it may be that you will see action like we know that how Ismail Hania was killed,
yes,
or how Hezbollah chief was killed. This time, after Security Cabinet meeting, Israel has decided that without changing the Iranian regime, without removing the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei,
yes,
Israel will not be secure.
Right.
And to secure, to get the overall security, Israel needs to do something. And we should not forget when Defense Minister has said that our action will be lethal, precise, and surprising.
Yes.
So my bet is that Israel will do something kind of Ismail Hania kind of attack. And the senior political leadership may be the next target. Within a couple,
very important update there, Manish. The fact that Iran's leadership could be under direct attack. We've heard of Israel talking about leadership change as the only lasting solution for peace in the region. But I'm going to ask Itai Melchior that question. But first, I want to ask Sumit, who's on the Mediterranean seafront there in the line of fire, where Israel is attacking Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Sumit, give us your sense from the ground there. Hezbollah has been under relentless attack from the Israeli Air Force, and of course the ground operations have begun. What's the situation on the ground right now as we speak? It's Yom Kippur today. Sumit, over to you.
Sandeep, it's almost 2 weeks now when the ground forces of Israel has moved to the South Lebanon area. But we have seen a very slight or very small change in their strategy. But we have noticed two major changes in their strategy. First, now from last 24 hours, first, Israel started targeting the eastern Lebanon areas. That is
Right.
a area with the majority of population Druze and Christians. It's basically eastern Lebanon is a border area with Lebanon and Syria. And the second most important thing which we have observed, that now Israel has been targeting the populated area, the densely populated areas in the
Right.
central Beirut as well. The strategy, the change behind this is the very big reason. That is that now Hezbollah commanders are
Yes.
now hiding in those areas which is densely populated with the Christians and the Druze population. It's kind of the shelters, safe shelters
Right.
for the Hezbollah commanders, because they can easily mix in all these populations, and they know that Israel is not going to target directly on these areas because they have a majority of population is Druze and Christian. But now
Right.
Israel is targeting all these areas. The major change which we have seen in the strategies of Hezbollah on the other side, they are consolidating themselves. They have been taking a precautionary measures. We have seen that in the South Lebanon area, they have created a steel walls.
Yes.
Steel walls, especially Sandeep, we have seen that these kind of walls have been created so that the enemy can't see you while you are traveling, while you are moving your major
Right.
asserts to the forward areas. And they are doing this also because they have a major belief that now Israel snipers will target their
Right.
location sitting at very long distance. So
Right.
these are the strategies which both the parties have changed. But what is more important, there is a sense of insecurity in the civilians that now Israel will target the populated area, whether
Right.
it is in the central Beirut, whether it is in Dahya, or whether it is into the north of Beirut. So there is a clean chaos between the population and civilians that Israel will do something major in upcoming days. Back to you, Sandeep.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Sumit and Manish. You heard it from two of India's finest defense journalists reporting from the front lines of one of the most tense situations in the world right now, that's West Asia. We have for you Manish Jha from Israel and Sumit Chaudhary from Lebanon. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and stay safe. We'll keep coming back to you for news and updates. Itai, you just heard it from our reporters on the ground there. Sumit talks about how Hezbollah is now sheltering amongst the Druze and the Christian populations, the populated areas, and these are areas of the minorities whom Hezbollah is opposed to. So here's an irony that Hezbollah is hiding among the very minorities that it opposes. Does this suggest that Hezbollah is literally in a shambles? Its command and control is in tatters. Its leadership is on the run. What's your sense?
Well, first, Iranian proxies and terrorist organizations have found it very comfortable to hide among civilians. We saw it in Gaza extensively, and we also see it in Lebanon. I actually want to focus on what Sumit said and actually try to analyze for your viewers what is
Yes.
going on. There are two threats from Lebanon. The first threat that was always talked about is exactly what happened in the end from Gaza, from Hamas, and that is the Radwan forces entering Israel's northern border, swarming the border, attacking civilian villages, exactly what we saw on October 7th in the south.
Right.
And that is what the ground offensive is targeting. They have found vast amounts of ammunition, rockets, missile, propelled grenades, explosives, uniforms, everything ready, including tunnels to get organized in and tunnels that make some of the way very close to the border, and even a couple trying to cross. That is one threat. The second threat from Hezbollah is the longer range missiles and rockets, and they are launched from further away. So yes, the short term 10, 12 kilometers that we've seen fired from southern Lebanon close to the border go all the way to the Air Force command post in the Meron Tzfat mountain area, and also hit and killed civilians a bit in that range of fire. But the longer range missiles are throughout Lebanon from much further away. Those are missiles that can do well over 60 and 100 plus kilometers. They are launched and they are placed underground and hid inside civilian buildings, warehouses, underground with hidden openings much further away. Those
Right.
are mostly targeted by the Air Force. So those are the two threats we're dealing with. While doing that, there are four kinds of targets. The third kind of target is the leadership, mostly in the Tahrir
Right.
quarter of Beirut, now mostly in hiding. And the fourth thing that is dealt with is the supply chain.
Right.
That is supply lines running from Iran
logistics.
through Syria,
Yes.
and also back warehousing and manufacturing sites in Lebanon itself.
Right, absolutely.
So that
and
is
Itai, a great sense of what's going on in Lebanon, but there's another front as well. Israel is fighting on multiple fronts, but the second front, which everyone's looking at very closely, is Iran, and the fact that Israel has to respond to the 1st October missile attack, 180 missiles that were fired by Iran. Interesting point by Manish, where he says that regime change is a priority now for Israel, that without a change of regime in Iran, there cannot be a lasting peace. How reliable would this kind of an input be? The fact that Israel wants to go after the Iranian regime, targeting the Iranian regime. How possible is that? How plausible is that? How probable is that scenario?
Well, even though Yom Kippur, which is starting in a few hours, is the time that the Jewish people feel closest to God,
Yes.
we still can't play God. And we can't dictate to other countries who the leadership is going to be. Of course, it is clear to everybody that a change of leadership in Iran is in the interest not only of Israel, but of the entire region. But that said, it is not easy to do, because if you target one or two or five of the leaders of Iran,
Right.
you haven't had a change regime. And in the end, that will be up to the Iranian people. So yes, if the economy is worse, and that was what the US was doing a few years ago with sanctions, then maybe the people will want to change the regime. But also, we all know that in a dictatorship, it is very difficult to change a regime. So I think that is a bit ambitious as a
Right.
goal. So then your next question is going to be, so what is Israel going to attack?
Yes.
And here in your opening, you stated the options and the problems with them.
Yes.
Remember, the US is applying a lot of pressure on Israel. If Israel was to attack the nuclear sites, which is something
Yes.
that actually the US will maybe live with a bit easier, because
Right.
we'll get to oil in a minute,
Yes.
Israel does not have the capability to do it by itself.
Right.
It will need the US assistance, and it doesn't look as if this is happening. And if Israel does it on itself, it can only harm infrastructure, it can delay, but it cannot take out or wipe out the entire nuclear program, which is built deep inside mountains, very difficult to get to.
Yes.
Yes, create a lot of damage.
Right.
Attacking oil infrastructure, which is probably the easiest and with the highest gains, because it will cripple the economy, is very against the interest of the US, as you said, elections coming up. But
Yes.
also, Iran has sent explicit warnings
Yes.
to the neighboring countries that if they allow Israel to attack their oil sites, going over their airspace,
Yes.
they will attack their oil sites, and the UAE and the Emirates and other countries in the region have very vulnerable oil sites, and it is
Right.
much more important for them, and will also have a much bigger impact on world price, because remember, the Iranian oil exports are quite small still, mainly to China.
Yes.
And the region and Asia are not that big. So that is a possibility, but it's going to be very difficult to do, and it's going to be probably cause the most aggravation in the US. So yes, leadership is a possibility,
Right.
but that's symbolic. Therefore, a fourth option that we haven't mentioned is taking out military targets, strategic military targets.
Right.
Israel did that in the previous attack, after the April
Yes.
attack. They took up some air defense systems just to show that we could. There was air defense systems who were
Right.
protecting nuclear sites, but that is a possibility. But again, the retaliation this time will have to be bigger and grander. And I think you were right on that our Ministry of Defense
Yes.
said, prepare for a surprise.
Prepare for a surprise. And 1973, of course, Deepak, marks the time of the Yom Kippur
War.
when Egyptians took the initiative and surprised Israel. And of course, Israel came back all guns blazing at Egypt. And that was possibly the last war that we saw in West Asia because of that offensive from counter-offensive from Israel. But what's your sense now, given the fact that Israel needs to retaliate for October the 1st, and it's in a tight spot for the various reasons that Itai just mentioned? Each option has an attendant risk clause attached to that. What's your sense? Which of these 3 or 5 options is Israel going to look at?
I think the most viable option, but let me just preface it by that all of them seem very dangerous. You know,
Yes.
it's a dangerous game of brinkmanship
Right.
that we are approaching right now. And one must understand that on the other side, Iran is simply saying much the same things. For instance, their claim is that they have demonstrated that they could breach
Yes.
the Iron Dome. So
On the 1st
the
of
question is,
October,
where
yes.
does this lead? Unless you have a missile strike which ends the whole war in itself.
Yes.
We are looking at a dangerous series of events that lead to escalation on and on.
Dangerous series of events indeed, Deepak, and that's a story we've been tracking for several days now and continue to follow. But thank you very much, Itai, for joining us. Our warmest wishes to you on Yom Kippur today. We'll keep coming back to you for news and updates. Thank you very much.